Hello, I'm Bert Kinnister, President of Tight Pocket Video Productions. We have a real treat for you today. We have George Fels with us. He's going to do a tape on mastering straight pool for you. If you don't know George, he's an editor for the Billiards Digest, and he's the author of one of the best instructional books ever made for the billiard market. This is Mastering Pool. We're going to do Mastering Straight Pool for you right here today with George Fels. Let me tell you a little bit about the equipment. This is a 3.5 by 7, but it's set up just like a gold crown. It has full profile rubber, Brunswick Super Speed rubber, and Simona 760 cloth. We're only going to be using 10 balls. Now let me tell you, the reason that we do this is because we can get good camera shots, we can get in close, and we feel that we can impart more knowledge to you, the viewer. It may give George a little trouble here and there, but I really doubt it. He really knows what he's doing here. I've got 4-inch pockets on here, 2 balls won't fit, so there's a couple of problems with the equipment, but to get you the full benefit, we've decided to go with the smaller table. And I'm going to let George take over now, and this is Mastering Pool with George Fels, a real treat for me and a real treat for you.
Thank you, Bert. I know what you're thinking as you do your pool penance in that dreaded chair. How come the other guy has all those easy shots to shoot and everything I do is a struggle? Well, it's not because the other guy is nice to his mother, although that wouldn't hurt. It's not because your moon is in the wrong house, no offense. It's because he understands the principles of position play better than you do. But you and I are going to work on a nice surprise for him. What we're going to do in this tape is cover the principles of position. I'm using straight pool to exercise those principles because straight pool is the best game to teach you all the other games. Even if you play very little straight pool or none, what I have to show you here will help you in whatever form of straight pool you do play. So let's take a look at this break shot, which is a good one that I've left myself. My mother raised no dummies. And the reason it's a good one is not only will it take my cue ball into the stack, and the smaller table size and the 10-ball rack will help demonstrate these complex principles. Not only will it take me into the stack, but it lets me contact the corner ball here. No matter where you're breaking the balls from, the optimum scenario is that you can make contact with these 4 corner balls of the stack. In a full rack, of course, it'd be the balls in the 5-ball row. The reason for that is fairly obvious. Each of these corner balls is free on one side and gives your cue ball an opportunity for some breathing room. So we'll break these balls, and let's see what we can learn about position in just one rack. Could have been better. But the first thing we're going to do is not shoot any balls, but just take a walk around the table. That in itself is very important, because it lets you have a look at the layout from all 4 directions. All 6 pockets count. First thing we're going to do is assess the table layout in terms of the ball confronting us. And what that specifically means is, first we want to see which balls have open paths to pockets just as they lie. Though these are your A balls, you can see the 8, the 1, and the 2 are all makeable. And the 3 has part of a path to that pocket. Those are your A balls. The second consideration is which balls will have open paths to pockets once you make 1 or more of the A's. In this case, it's only this ball that gets freed up.
Excuse me, George.
Go ahead.
Just to make sure I'm clear, when you say a ball, that means a ball that can already be shot into?
A ball that is pocketable just as it lies and doesn't need to be moved any further.
Okay.
Here we have the 4 ball, which needs to be opened up to a pocket, either by making this ball first or the 10 first. And if there were balls still tied up, which absolutely could not be made, those would count as your C balls. And the ball you use to open up the C balls are your Ds. Just a 4-step process, and it only takes a few seconds once you get used to this thinking process, despite the fact that it might take me a few more words than that to explain it to you. Now, there really isn't much I can do with this except play the 6, either by using the 3 or this combination. And the way you determine which ball to shoot first, once you've done your 4-step rack analysis, is you try and find the easiest thing you can do that will be of benefit. Not necessarily the easiest shot, but the easiest thing you can do that will help you make 1 ball and be in position for another one. If you could do that every time you shot, no one would beat you and you'd be king of the hill instantly. Nobody can do it forever, but through careful rack analysis and the proper position procedures, you can increase your runs and improve quite quickly. So let's say I'm going to play position. I'm going to try and make the 6 and play position on the ball I used to make the 6. And after that, I want to get my cue ball in the center of the table. cut the floor pretty thin here. Okay. Now, at this point, all the balls have an open path to a pocket. They're all A balls. From this point on, I want to be sure not to move any second ball with the cue ball after I pocket the one I intended to. This is a very valid principle for all forms of pool. You never want to move a second object ball without a purpose. The reason for that is you can't predict where it will wind up or your cue ball after you touch it, and you want to be able to predict as much as you can in pool. With all the balls open, I can also start to look for a break shot into the next rack. At this point, the optimal ball would be this one, and the best ball to get me to it would be this one, so we'll try and save those two for last. Not too bad. The pattern's apparent here already. Make the 4 here. The 7, the 2, the 8, and the 1. Fairly easy to predict them when they're all open like this. Also, try to get at least a slight angle on every ball. The reason for that is when you form a straight line between cue ball, object ball, and pocket, you know your cue ball has to wind up on that line. You have many more cue ball options if you leave yourself a slight angle each time. Now this rack is going exactly as played. The right cue ball, the right break ball. Keep going and see if we can get another.
Get some balls, George.
Okay, thank you. We see what more we can learn in the next rack. There's something to be learned almost every time you run the balls. Wrong guy. Okay, the last rack, we learned a 4-step plan for rack analysis. Now I'm going to give you what I call the whenever possibles, or WPs. There are 9 of them, but it's well worth you memorizing the 9 because this will teach you how to play the kind of racks that you envy everybody else. No mistakes, never in trouble, the kind of effortless racks that we all want to run. The first of these WPs is you never shoot hard when you can shoot soft. Whenever possible, use less force rather than more. Secondly, whenever possible, you want to stay in the vertical center of the cue ball rather than using English. English does have its place in the game, and we'll get into that. Whenever possible, you want to do straight follow, straight draw, dead center hit, because that provides you with the most predictable path for the cue ball. Third, and this is extremely critical, we went through it in the first rack, never touch a second ball with the cue ball unless there's a purpose to it. Whenever possible, choose shots which will let you pocket a ball and send the cue ball somewhere untouched. Fourth, we always want to choose shots where we can roll the cue ball someplace as opposed to forcing it or driving it. Sort of ties in with Rule 1. WPs 5, 6, and 7 have to do with the rails. WP 5 says whenever possible, choose a cue ball route that doesn't send your cue ball to any rail rather than going to a rail unnecessarily. Number 6, don't use 2 rails where 1 will get the job done. Number 7, don't use 3 rails where 2 or even 1 will accomplish the same thing. 8th, we try and leave ourselves with a safety valve on all secondary break shots, a shot we can shoot no matter where the cue ball ends up. And finally, 9th, we try and take balls off the rail early in our sequence. There's 2 reasons for that. In the first place, they represent potential sources of trouble if you send further balls to that same rail. Secondly, they inhibit the routes of travel for your cue ball. Those are the 9 WPs. We'll reprise them at the end of this rack, and I'll show you how they come into play. Here we have an A ball, an A ball, an A ball. The 1 and the 8 are both Bs. The 5 and the 10 are probably going to have to be moved somewhat. Now, what I'm going to do first, I'm obviously going to have to start with one of these combination shots, either the 1, 7 or the 8, 9. I'm going to do that based on what I think I can do that will benefit me next. All right, let's start with the 9 ball. And I think I'm probably going to eliminate the last problem, which is the 5 on the same shot. That's much better. Now I can go ahead and shoot this 1-7, and I still should have something left afterwards. It'll be fine. Now at this point it looks like I'm going to save either the 2 or the 4 for the next rack. I'll resist the temptation to hit this with English and stay right in the center like I said. Trying to get position on the 10 here. Not too bad. Not too bad, in fact. Here's a point. I could shoot the 10, but it would mean I'd have to move the 4. I'm going to stick to WP3 instead and choose shots where I don't have to touch a second ball. Okay. Now if I have to move the 4, at least it'll be moving towards a pocket, and I should have something to shoot at next. Right there. It'll be hard to miss this 4, but I'm going to try it anyway. I hit it just a little bit. But if it had come up to here and the cue ball had gone to here instead, I wouldn't have a shot. So you can see how subtle these differences can be. Okay, there I went 1 rail instead of 2. Is the rack still here? I must have pushed it too far under the table. Ah, okay. Okay, again I have a break shot which will let me contact the corner of the rack. And although a lot of players would shoot this with follow to go into the mass of balls, I'd rather see the cue ball come out of there this way so that I have the object balls going one way and the cue ball going another. Minimizes the chances I'll get tied up. Okay. I slowed the cue ball down a bit more than I'd have liked to, but it stayed free of all the other balls. Now, the 9 ball has a clear path to the side pocket. The 4 and 5 will go here. The 1 will go here. The 10 has a clear path here, which is why it's important to walk around the table. The rest of these balls are either B balls or going to have to be moved. But we're going to start out by taking a shot where we don't have to move anything. Now, another principle we can learn from this rack is something I call the cornermost, and it has to do with the 4 balls in any layout closest to the 4 corner pockets. In this case, the 1, the 5, the 6, and the 8. It is frequently of great advantage to plan a sequence which lets you go from one of those cornermost balls to another one. What you do is play the rack from, as the experts say, from the outside in, and it lets you save balls in the vicinity of the rack for break shots into the next. I think I'm going to start with this cornermost 5 out here and get to the center of the table where I have my maximum options. All right. Now I can either shoot the 4 and save the 8, or I can shoot the 8 and save the 4. The choice depends on which will net me the most. In this case, if I shoot the 4, I can turn these balls loose, and that should be the last of the problems for the rack. Okay. It's a problem with breaking balls. Can't be sure of their final destination. We have a combination on the 3-10. I have the 7, which will go in that pocket once I make the 1. To shake some of these balls loose here if we want another shot out of this. That's a little better. Okay, at this point the balls are all open. I can probably shoot them all in the same pocket and get a break shot for the next rack. Now on that rack I shot, from the point I demonstrated the principle, I shot all the cornermost balls in a row. And there's another thing we can learn in conjunction with this, which I call either X's and O's or cutting across mid-10. Now when you shoot the cornermost balls, as I just explained, what you're doing in effect is circling the rack, sending your cue ball outside the perimeter. Sometimes it pays to cut a diagonal path across the layout as well to connect your cornermost balls. That's where your X's comes in. And the way you choose when to do which all depends on how the balls come up. But all these principles we're learning here are applicable to any table layout you face without waiting for them to spread the way they do here, because they may never. Who knows? This with a little inside or left English here. So it gets me off that corner ball a bit better. And you always inspect the balls. Looks like the 6 ball can be made from out of what would normally be C balls here. However, I don't have to do that if I don't want to. It might go, but in this game, certainties are always better than probabilities. So I'm going to take this combination shot and play position on the 3 next. Now I can break these balls under control, and I still have safety valves, as in WP8, here and here. Got a bonus. These balls are still going to have to be dealt with. It's only, of the 3, only the 1 can be made. So, in pool as in life, we're going to deal with problems sooner rather than later and go somewhere where we can do something with the 1. I didn't get quite enough angle to break it out of there. I get one more try at it. One more turn. I'll have to try and make the 4. This is an instance of cutting across the pattern here. If I were still playing cornermost ball to cornermost ball, I'd shoot for the 6. No particular advantage in that, so we're going to go across diagonally. That's all right. Go just a little past the point of contact here. Thinner than I would like, but I think it's still makeable. All right, I got what I deserved out of that one. All right, gives us a chance to start from scratch. We don't have to roll back for this. Show you some common errors made in playing position, pitfalls for you to avoid. It's one thing if your opponent traps you, but it's a lot more frustrating when you walk into your own traps. And as you might suppose, since playing position is a concept which is complex, very easy to make some blunders. Some of them more common than others. First of all, let's say your break shots like this. The crank camera will be able to get a good look at this one. First of all, break shots from behind the rack are not nearly as preferable as break shots coming in from this direction. For that matter, you don't want much to do with breaking the balls from the side. Breaking the balls from the head of the table towards the foot is best because you keep the balls down here in the business area. When you break the balls from behind or from the side, you can be pretty sure of sending something to this half of the table where it can't possibly help you get to the next rack. So break shots from the rear are not generally advised as your first choice. When they come up, what most players would do, and this is the same principles we discussed a few racks ago, what most players would do with this would be to try and force their cue ball to the side rail and then toward the center. I instead am going to run the cue ball in the opposite direction from the balls that I'm turning loose here. I should have a next shot without getting stuck. See how that runs right around the balls? All you could ask. Okay, we have 5 A balls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we have 4 balls which simply must be moved. They can't be made any place. First mistake most players would make is that they would neglect to figure out exactly how these balls are going to be broken. You can see the 9 is close enough to get the job done with any kind of angle, but you have to try and predict your cue ball's path out of there as well. In this case, the center ball in this mess is going to have to be moved if I expect a second shot out of this. So I'm going to try and get my cue ball right here in the passage between the 3 and 10, move them this way, and my next shot out of this should be the 7. Now, exactly as called. I've created another problem for myself, but it's negotiable if I can get the cue ball on this side of the table, and I have these 3 balls to help me play position for either of these, which will be my break shot into the next rack. Another common mistake players would make here would be to play position on the 10 ball simply because it's closest to the 5. There are 2 principles to be learned here. First of all, much more advantageous to move the cue ball up and take care of one of the higher balls than it is to simply play position for the closest ball. And secondly, until all your balls are open and available to pockets, you always want to leave one ball down low. The reason for that is your secondary break shot might send the cue ball down there, and if that happens, you will welcome the company. So I'm going to move the cue ball up after making the 5 into this area where I can pocket one of those and free up the other 2. In this case, all I need to do is make the 3. A lot of players would like to bring their cue ball out of there along these lines, but notice that if I do that, I'm jeopardizing my break shot. Also, it violates WP5. Why go 2 rails when you can go 1? Okay, from here I can't really go wrong no matter what I do. A lot of players would leave this 4 ball for last, but I'm going to take it off now because the 6 is such a big target, and it gives me all this room to play position in, whereas if I want to save the 4 ball for last, I have to be pretty precise. So I'll just pop. Pop. There we are. Not bad at all. Try another rack and I'll... Okay.
There's a little water over there if you get the dry.
I could go forever.
Okay.
All right, let's see some more do's and don'ts. Good break shot out nice and high where I can contact the top of the stack. Turn the cue ball loose. Set the cue ball right dead center now. Okay. Have, as far as I can tell, just 3 open balls here. So we have to start making our plan early. It's like Elaine said to Benjamin in The Graduate. You remember The Graduate, don't you? She said, you have to have a plan, Benjamin. I don't want you to leave without a plan. Now, we know we can get into these balls, but again, we want to try and be precise about it. Here, if I move these C balls and leave the cue ball in this vicinity, I will have this, which is a B, once I move this A. So we're going to try and shoot a billiard here, pocketing the 3, sending the cue ball to this rail, and making contact with the 2, maybe the 2 and 7. But at least I have some idea of what I want this break shot to do and the approximate path I want the cue ball to take. Another mistake players would make would be to hit this ball well above center. Not a good idea. It flattens out the path. Now I didn't hit the 2 very hard. I didn't do anything wrong, and now I can continue this. I'll try that same break shot using the 4. That's a little better. Don't have the 9 anymore, but we still have shots. Go ahead with this. Quite all right. These balls must be broken. I don't think I can afford to let too many more shots go by. I think we'll try it using this one. This is the easiest way. Notice that in order to separate balls, you don't have to hit them very hard. Now, believe it or not, that little tickle on the 6 means the difference between my being able to make the 9 and having a problem with it. So secondary break shots don't have to annihilate the stack of balls. They only have to get the job done, and sometimes that means just moving a ball a fraction of an inch. Didn't mean to touch that, but we're still alive. And this is the penalty you pay for having a ball on the rail late in your rotation. Just about got me. I think I left myself something unmakeable here, so let's improvise one more rack of balls. So this is another valuable tip you can learn from. Here you have a ball which is pretty fair distance from the stack as break shots go, and yet you'll find that these break shots sometimes do a very, very efficient job of opening up these balls, despite the fact that the cue ball is making contact a longer time after hitting the first ball. It seems to pick up some added spin from contact with the first ball, and therefore you get the effect of what bowlers call a working ball. You separate the balls quite often. Sometimes you can be right on top of the balls and dynamite won't get them apart. Okay, here we have, as you'd expect on a 3.5 by 7, we have the balls pretty tightly clustered. This ball is a B, it needs this one to be moved first. This ball is a B, it needs this one to be moved first. We can avoid all the other balls, we'll be all right here. And we'll start with this, the combination, the 7-3. And we're going to try and get the cue ball at least to here, so if I don't have anything else, I have the 9 next. Not too bad. If I had all my druthers, I'd have rather not touch the 2. This will free up the 6. And now I think all the balls are A balls, so my break shot will probably be one of these 2 balls, and the ball I'll use to get to it will be the other one. So I'm going to save the 1, 2, and the ball on the side rail there for last. Okay. Notice that this shot has 2 or 3 degrees of angle to it. Much, much better than my being straight in line with it. From here on, I can play the cornermost balls, and if I could go around without touching a second ball, I'll be right where I want to be. Not quite what I wanted, but that'll be workable. draw here. Okay, now I've got the position I want on the 6 to get on either the 1 or 2 next. In this case, if I leave the 1 ball, I have a pretty good chance of contacting the head ball. If I leave the 2, even though the 1 is slightly easier from here, if I leave the 2, I have to take on the interior balls. I'm going to choose to play this one. In fact, I don't even need to draw it. There's just 1 or 2 degrees of angle here. Would have been enough to make the difference, though. So I got where I wanted to go. Okay, let's review, first of all, your 4-step rack analysis. A, which balls have open paths to pockets just as they lie? B, which balls will have open paths to pockets once you move 1 or more of the A balls? C, which balls are simply unpocketable as they lie and are going to have to be moved somehow? And D, which of your A or B balls are you going to use to break up the C's? Once you have that, you're ready to begin planning your sequence. You stick to the WPs, like the name says, whenever possible. Whenever possible, shoot soft rather than hard. Whenever possible, stay in the vertical center of the cue ball rather than use side English. My producer, Bert Kinnister, never uses more than a tip of English. Another of the world's great teachers, Jerry Bryseth, advocates using all the English you can control. I can't tell you which is best as a pat answer because I haven't seen you play. You should do what you're comfortable with and try and play within yourself. 3, never touch a second object ball without a purpose to it. 4, whenever possible, roll the cue ball someplace as opposed to forcing or driving it. 5, whenever possible, don't send your cue ball to a rail, as long as you can do something beneficial by not doing so. 6, don't send your cue ball to 2 rails when you can achieve the same thing with 1. 7, don't send your cue ball 3 rails when you can achieve the same thing with 2 or 1. 8, try and plan ahead so you have a safety valve brake shot coming out of your secondary brakes. And 9, get balls off the rail early in your sequence. Once you get into this thinking process, it will take you no more than a few seconds. You have to reassess which are your A, B, C's, and D's each time you break the balls, but no more than a few seconds, and you will not only be shooting good pool, but you'll be thinking good pool, and this game is close to 80% mental. So between the ears is where you really want to improve. I'm George Fels of the Billiards Digest. If you'd like a written summary of what we've been through here, there's a book we can recommend. It's this one, and it's mine.
We have a companion book to this series. This is Mastering Pool by George Fels. If you have any confusion with the things you've heard here, then I highly recommend this book. This book can be bought at 1-800-433-9833. How much is it, George?
$12.95.
The book is $12.95 plus $5 shipping and handling. All credit cards, everything's accepted. Give them a call, 1-800-433-9833. And George, if you wouldn't mind, could you set up a couple of optimum brake shots people are looking for? And
good idea.
And show us a little bit more about what you're talking about with the secondary brake shots, because I'm not completely clear on that. And you know, I need straight pull education. I've watched all the videotapes that are on the market, and this is the most straight pull education that you can get any place. And that's a few things. I'm a little confused with what you mean by secondary brake shots. And maybe go over the A, B, and C balls just one more time for the folks.
Okay, now before we get into the review of the A, B, and C balls, let's review some less than optimal brake shots. Mastering Pool gets into this in some depth. The best brake shots, as I've explained, are those that come from the head of the table towards the foot in some proximity with the stack. This isn't bad, but you have to turn the cue ball loose. Shoot the 6 ball on the side and go into the stack. You absolutely must contact the head of the stack with this brake shot. If you go off the side, you're headed for a corner pocket here, or maybe come off these 2 rails and get stuck behind the remaining clustered balls. Far too many risks in a brake shot like this for me to try and leave it as long as I had other options. Same for this, which looks easy because the ball is so easy to pocket, but the fact is if you don't come off this rail and make contact with the corner of the stack here, you can expect to be in trouble. If this were a full 14-ball rack with a 5-ball row in back, and you hit the center ball, you'd stick there like a wart on a pickle. If you hit the ball next to the corner ball and that corner ball in quick succession, you're headed for a scratch. You can also come out to this side rail and back into the side of the stack. So in order for this shot to have any chance of success, you have to be able to make a billiard from the object ball to the corner ball, and you should look to see if you can before you shoot it. This is not a particularly good break shot. Too many things can go wrong. The cue ball can come off the stack and go down to the bottom rail without anybody for company. It can stick on the side of the stack, or it can come off the top of the stack where you'd like to and go too far back down the table to do anybody any good. This is an underrated break shot that a lot of players pass up. In both one pocket and straight pool, this is a very good break shot if you can control your cue ball to go from object ball to corner ball. Generally speaking, the cue ball will go to the rail and then to the center of the table the way you like. All right, let's take a break shot and review the A's, B's, and C's. This is a break shot down low. I'm going to contact the corner ball here, and although a lot of players don't like to leave a ball this low for break shots, the fact is you have an excellent chance to open up the rack because you're hitting it at its fattest point. Also, there's a possibility to play this shot two ways so that you hit the rack going in and again coming back. I think since we're going to hit the 9-ball a little thin, we'll try for one of those double contact shots. Oh, also a hint I can give you when you can't get to the corner balls. Let's say the ball is here, so I know I'm going to go into the part of the stack that's dangerous. What good players will do with this will be to get into pool's third dimension, and I'm not talking about dramatic jump shots. Probably don't even have to get the ball more than a fraction of an inch off the ground, but if I jump into these balls instead of just plowing into them in the same plane, I have a much better chance of getting them open. Let's try this break shot instead. And if we had been running in slow motion, you'd have seen the little hop of the ball that helped me get the balls apart as well as I did. They all seem to be A balls. It's going to be difficult to get around without touching a second ball. At this point, my best break shot is probably this guy here. Let's see what we can do. I'm going to do the easiest thing that will benefit me. Had to use the 3 for help there, but that's all right. That still counts. These two balls now form a potential break shot proposition, so we're probably going to try and leave them alone. Pick these off. Remember, all pockets count when you're planning a sequence. I could shoot that 10-ball up in here. I don't need to do that. Make it any harder on myself than I need to. Okay. You don't want to be careful not to move either of these balls. The way I'm going to plan this is one more principle we can learn tonight. This is the 90-degree principle. Briefly stated, it means when you hit the cue ball in the dead center, on any but a straight-in shot, it will deflect 90 degrees from the path of the object ball. If you want it to deflect more than 90 degrees, you hit it lower than dead center, and if you want it to deflect less, you hit it higher. In this case, 90-degree deflection would take me just about into the 3-ball, which I don't want to do. So I'm going to shorten that angle by hitting this with high English, and hopefully I can go right in between the 2 and the 3. Close enough to be efficient. Let's say that went. Now I'm going to come back in this direction. Okay, and it's just about a ball's width worth of follow here. And there are two ways you can accomplish that. I can hit just below center hard, or I can hit just above center soft. Since the balls are close together, we'll opt for the latter. Had I made it, I'd have been right here. Anyway, once more, your A balls are the balls which can be made as they lie. Your B balls are the balls usually behind those balls, which will be available to pockets once the A's are moved. Your C balls are balls which simply must be moved, and your D ball is also an A or a B that you're going to use to move one of those C's. Thank you for joining me in my tape on Principles of Position.
First tape in the 4-tape series Mastering Pool for Tight Pocket Video Productions. Again, if you have any questions or need further elaboration, I highly recommend this book, Mastering Pool by George Fels, 1-800-433-9855. 9833. It's $12.95 plus $5 shipping and handling. There'll be 3 more tapes in this series: Mastering 8-Ball, Mastering 1-Pocket, and Mastering 9-Ball. Mastering 8-Ball and Mastering 1-Pocket are available now. They're $29.95 plus $4.50 shipping and handling at 1-800-433-9833. Mastering 9-Ball will be released maybe 8 or 9 months from now. The other 3 are available now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.